Good evening, everyone. This is Vachana English Edition with me, Tamina Kausji, taking you through just another episode of the talk show that gives our international as well as English-speaking viewers insights into the political, economic, and social landscape of Malaysia. Now, of course, tonight's episode focuses on all things retabling of Malaysia's 2023 budget. So we're going to be asking the interesting questions about just how Madani is this 338.1 billion ringgit budget. So we've got lots of questions for our panel of experts who are joining me in-house in the studios today about the fact that this is, of course, the first budget presented under Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim's unity-led government, and at the same time hot on the heels of the government's first 100 days in administration. With all of that in mind, let's welcome our panel of experts joining me in the studios today, beginning with, of course, University Malaya Social Wellbeing Research Centre Senior Research Fellow, Dr. Zulkifli Omar. Good to have you with us, Dr. Zulkifli.
Thank you.
We also have with us IDEA's Deputy Research Director, Sri Murniati Yusof. Good to have you with us too.
Thank you.
And last but certainly not least, Federation of Malaysian Business Association's Chairman, Colonel Bersekutu Datuk Abdul Malik Abdullah.
Thank you so much.
All right, welcome everyone. Thanks so much for taking your time, especially on a Monday evening. Let's get started. Now, the themes for Budget Madani, of course, were three-pronged: driving an inclusive and sustainable economy, inspiring confidence with institutional governance reforms, facilitating social justice by reducing inequalities. Murniati, may I start by asking you, do you feel the tabled budget matches these three themes? And will it be able to achieve what it set out, particularly looking at IDEA's specific interests?
I think there are several budget trusts or budget policies that actually match some of the policy objectives that the government set out. I think I'm very interested in seeing institutional and governance reform. I think there are several areas there that we are particularly very interested in. The Fiscal Responsibility Act, the Government Procurement Act. I think both legislations are very important to ensure fiscal consolidation, to ensure transparency in government procurement. So these are very important. And I think another one that is actually quite interesting is the consolidation of many government agencies, the consolidation of federal statutory bodies and government-linked companies, which is quite important to ensure that resources are being used efficiently. So I think those areas that we are very interested in. So.
Yes, definitely a government budget that is looking towards closing all those little gaps and holes. What about yourself, Dr. Zulkifli, your perspectives?
I think we need to bear in mind that budget is addressing the short-term issues. But of course, currently we are facing many issues and people are facing many issues. Some of the issues are long-term in nature. So people expect budget try to solve the long-term issue as well. But I think what has been proposed, it is comprehensive because it has the element of growth, which is important in the current situation whereby the international demand is lacking. So domestic growth is important. So the government proposed the expansionary policy, fiscal deficit, so good because of to support domestic demand. At the same time, addressing the issue of social issues of the people having difficulties. Some vulnerable people do not have enough income because of the recent pandemic. Still, still there the problem. So it takes time to resolve that. But in the short term, I think people expect something. So I think it is in the budget as well. And also, like I also support the idea of reforms, institutional reform. That is important as well because we have many plans so far, either short-term or long-term plan. Of course, we are running this on the 12 Malaysia plan. But achieving the target, it is hinges upon the institutional framework. Sometimes, if our institutional is not supporting, don't have a good supporting environment, then we cannot achieve the target. So it's the right move to focus on the institutional reform, I think.
Steadily, but definitely not too slowly. All right, point well noted. And on that note, Dato' Abdul, I would like to ask you about your perspective, particularly from a business perspective, looking at what goodies were handed out, what were not handed out, and does it also keep in mind the themes for the budget?
Yeah, basically on our side from the Federation of Malaysian Business Associations, we have a lot of feedback from our members, especially we comprise of around 200 various associations. We are a federation of business associations, and we cover all walks of life, all races, and all kind of businesses, which means that includes restaurant business, spa business, hotel business, retail industry, hypermarket, mechanic shops, pharmacies, you name it, the whole works, you know. And it's interesting because you will seldom find an association in Malaysia. Our associations in Malaysia are usually race-based, unfortunately.
That's also true.
Yeah,
Yes.
but we have managed to gather under Federation of Malaysian Business Association, which was formed because of COVID-19. And we formed this loose coalition in 2019 when COVID hit us because of there were too many policies by the government which was topsy-turvy, flip-flop, and many U-turns were made. And industries were not consulted. And we were not sure what to do. The industry was not sure what to do. The government was not sure what to do. And too many people were suffering. So a group of us got together and started having press conferences and started having dialogue with the government and telling the government what should be done and what not should be done. One of the weaknesses we find here in Malaysia, there is lacking of engagement with the industry. A lot of policies are made at the ivory towers in Putrajaya, and they take into account, which is maybe an academician's view or the view of the advisor of the view of the rich. And even though the government tends to form some jawatan kuasa, some committees to find the feedback and the input, what's happening on the ground, but unfortunately, the appointees to this group is normally people who are Tan Sris, Dato Sris, Datos, who are appointed because of their position, not because of they don't actually know what's happening on the ground. If you want to hear something about the penjaja, the guy who is appointed should come from the Hawkers Association. If you want to hear about Pasar Malam, the guy got to come from the Pasar Malam.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what we're trying to tell the government. And the budget of 388 billion is definitely a plus point compared to the previous budget. And we have tried very hard to shy away to have a budget on race-based budget, which is a big no-no for our country, because in the past decades, and unfortunately in the past election, a lot of emphasis were given on race and religion-based politics. And we in FMBA are trying our very best to close the gap again and bring Malaysians together again as one nation. So we applaud the budget, but as a whole, of course, there are some sectors which we feel were neglected. For example, the tourism sector. We feel very less has been given to the tourism sector, which is a big money spinner for the country. And we also feel that certain of the allocation which was given, like the emphasis given on bankruptcy for people below 50,000, and that will help 130,000 people, because a lot of people be guarantors helping other people. And because one mistake, their whole life is jeopardized. And they can actually contribute to the economy. So I think things like those things are really good. And we can see the PM trying to move to the direction of taxing the richer more and giving more help to the poorer. But there will always be repercussions. You can't run away from that.
Naturally. Thank you so much for that. So far, Dr. Abdul, definitely fairly observed, especially in the tourism industry, and perhaps a little bit of a lack of allocations. From there, Murniati, I'd like to move into your perspectives of, can this bigger budget shelter Malaysia from a potentially challenging economic year ahead, particularly the continued global geopolitical headwinds, such as, of course, the Russian war in Ukraine? And do you think that the budget allocation for development, 99 billion ringgit this year, where do you think the bulk of this ought to go?
I think at the end of the day, budget has always been, to what extent that budget can help dampen economic downturn is, at the end of the day, depends on how the government implemented it. For example, if we have a cash handout, subsidies, to what extent that these subsidies reach the people who need it. Development expenditure, to what extent that actually the projects are being implemented, carried out. So if these are not actually being carried out efficiently, or not even being delivered, then the impact, the economic impact that we expect from this expenditure will not actually be happening. And as a result, then the impact of the budget, which is to help the public steering the economic downturn, will not be happening. And secondly, budget is not the only one. We also have monetary policy that we have to use. So there are other factors that we have to take into account when we said that budget actually can help reducing or help Malaysia steering the economic downturn. On the budget, the development budget, we have an increase, quite significant increase. But after we see the number, we crunch the number. Actually, most of the allocation, the increase actually goes to the Minister of Finance budget, which is to finance capital injections. Quite a significant increase, about 10 billion is a significant increase in terms of capital injections. However, the budget documents, of course, doesn't explain what capital injection is and why we need such an increase in capital injections.
That's right. Thank you so much for that. And Dr. Zulkifli, I'd like to ask you regarding particularly Sarawak. Now, SUPP, of course, had a recent statement that came out saying that the increase of 1 billion ringgit from the previous 4.6B for budget was just a drop in the bucket when considering Sarawak's specific developmental needs. What do you think about this moving forth?
I think it is a gesture. Of course, it is not enough. But of course, for a start, increment is good. But I think the main thing is to address the issue of inefficiencies and productivity. So I think even though small increment as not expected by them, but still it is useful to create the impact in terms of economic, what do you call, the growth for the state, and to, for example, the infrastructure project to support growth. So I think that is a quite significant contribution to the state.
Well noted. Thanks for that. Now, Datuk, moving on into something that you had mentioned briefly earlier, which was about the tax increments as well as the tax reductions. Let's have a look at basically whether this is a practical way to expand the country's coffers while reducing burdens for the middle class, because the middle class in particular stand to gain quite a lot from the reductions in income tax. Meanwhile, especially the lower bracket of the T20, which is also what's making people a little unhappy, since they say, what about the final two categories of the T20, those who are earning between 1 million to 2 million ringgit and those earning 2 million ringgit and above annually? They actually haven't been put under the tax bracket.
Well, I think we have to give the Prime Minister a chance, and we can see he's working very hard. And he's been talking the same dialogue ever since they took the government, the unity government. There's a lot of emphasis has been made on cost sara hidup. And we're talking about cost of living for the people. And he's also emphasizing a lot on leakages and on corruption. I think that it's obviously, since we are still very much backtrack, and now we want to make a change, and change cannot happen overnight. So we have to understand that all the people who have acquired positions, most of them are new ministers. They're trying to understand the ministry. So you can see there's not much action in a lot of ministries, except you see a few active ministries on the move. I think we need to give them time. But taxing the rich and giving a liberty to the poorer people, I think that is an excellent move, because the subsidy used to be a big advantage for everybody. And we had even leakages. Example, if you take Thailand, people coming in and putting petrol and diesel and going back to their country in Perlis, that was a big thing happening. And it was like free for all kind of thing. But now they have, KPDN has made sure that that kind of leakage will not happen anymore because, I mean, other countries are benefiting. In fact, our rakyat should be benefiting. Things like this, I think, are very important. If we can cut out the middleman and cut out the unnecessary expenditure, which our country cost of business will be much cheaper, and we can achieve so much more with lesser money. But having said that, he needs the support of all the kementerians. He single-handedly will not be able to deliver. And please, we have to remember, he's got a unity government, people with different mindset, different thinking, different political ideology, and people have their own expectations. No one's going to be happy with what they got. Everybody wants more. That's only human nature, you know. Thank you.
Fair enough. Yes, certainly, Dr. Zul.
We have to look at this tax issue on the spirit of it, because I think it's long overdue that our tax system is not progressive enough. Yeah, our tax system. So I think it's about time that we need to address. Even though the current budget, we cannot address everything, but I think this is a start to have to be more progressive. In fact, we have the one of the lowest tax collection. Our tax collection, like maybe like what, 11-12% of GDP.
Yeah,
that's
the
right.
lowest,
Less than 50%.
Less than.
Yeah.
So this we need more tax. Then of course, from the tax system, of course, the progressive tax is the answer. You know, you need to, for example, the wealth tax, and in fact we do not capitalize on that. People are getting wealthier, but we do not get the benefit of that for the country. You know. So I think that's a good move for a start. Then, of course, this is just beginning. Then we need to further refine, you know, the tax reform to be more sustained. Because it's not sustainable. If you keep taxing people the same, you know, whether you're rich or the poor. I mean, the middle class. Then the middle class will be squeezed, you know, in the middle. So I think it is a way forward.
Absolutely, especially with an aging nation considerations, which we'll get into in a different block. But at the same time, Murniati, I'd like to ask you, looking at the fact that excise duty will also be imposed on nicotine, vapes, e-cigs, to improve healthcare services. But do you feel this new tax will help with the currently struggling public healthcare system?
So far, if we see the budget documents, so all these new taxes, excise, sales tax, and also I think the luxury goods tax. Actually, the contribution so far, the estimate is around 285 million. So it's not much, and the reduction from income tax, even though we tax the rich more now, actually the reduction in terms of income tax quite high. It's 1 billion. So in total, the government, due to this tax breaks, we will lose around 750 million in terms of income tax. So in terms of tax, so it's quite significant. So even though we see some taxation to the rich, but actually in terms of general government cover,
That's right.
It's decreased. So we see a reductions in terms of government income, and that's going to be challenging for the government in trying to manage the fiscal deficit. I know that maybe this is not a good time to do that, but I think the path toward consolidation need to be started. But if we keep having this quite significant tax break is also difficult. It's a balance between increasing taxation, reducing taxation, introducing new tax. But at the end of the day, it's very important to keep in mind that we do rely on tax to finance the development of the country.
Absolutely. And the scales need to constantly be balanced, if not moving.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much and so far, everyone. We will be back after a short break, focusing on, of course, the government's main spending on Budget 2023. Madani. Stay with us. Don't go anywhere.
Sinar Daily is at Splash Mania Gamuda Cove, the new water theme park that just opened.
What sort of criticism is that? I think it would only be over the Burberry issue. Well, Burberry issue is not me. It is just his taste, who likes something that is good quality. And I don't think there's anything wrong about that. I mean, I'm sure all of you like something that's branded too. So once in a while, wearing it, I don't see any issue about that.
For next gen, mainly, basically our vision is for families to come here and they create happy memories together as well as one. Because it's a whole family theme park, one thing. And also, this is one of the largest indoor theme park. It's about 43,000 square feet.
Wow, that's big.
Welcome back to Wachana English Edition with me, Tamina Kowji. We, of course, today are focusing on Madani Budget 2023 with our panel of experts joining us in the studios. Right. Now, moving on into the public education arena, everyone, the Education Ministry received, of course, a higher allocation, 52.2B, which is, of course, the lion's share looking at the overall allocations. And so how should the Education Ministry spend its budget, particularly looking at the fact that there has been long-awaited promises for maintenance, improvement of school infrastructure, which have been going on? If I could direct this question to you, Dr. Zulkifli.
Of course, infrastructure is important. I think there is some schools are really overdue in terms of the maintenance. So there is necessary, and other than that, of course, to improve on the education itself. The training of teachers training, and also maybe the technology, the element the digitalization in education. So that's an important area that need to address, because in total, I think we should look at the main issue, the long-term issue, that our productivity is going down. So of course, through education is the most significant ways to address the issue of productivity. So we need to improve our labor force capability, the knowledge, the skills. So this in the environment of very dynamic, the dynamism of education industry all over the world, all countries are fighting for to improve their education system, to increase productivity, and you can see the issues of we have a lot of issues that the industry complaining that our students are not ready, but at the same time, the students also cannot get a job. Right? So this issue of mismatch maybe should be addressed within the education system. Maybe the more linkages between education providers and industries, how to address this issue.
Thank you for that. And Muniati, now educators and thought leaders have already expressed concerns that the 2.3B fund allocated for upgrading works in particular, they hope that it will be dispersed without the hassles of bureaucracy. But within a system where we have still had quite little structural change with regards to how grants are dispersed as well as allocations, how could this be perhaps expedited to allay fears around, it's just going to remain hanging for months and months on end, and these are immediate requirements?
Which allocation is that?
For the education.
For the education, I think education, most of the bulk of the allocation is actually for operating expenditure, which is to pay salaries of the teachers and all the education apparatus. So I think I agree with Prof that it's a matter of increasing productivity within the education system, ensuring that teachers are performing well, because that's where the investment is, right? It's not about how much money are you giving in terms of infrastructure. That's also important, but most importantly, the investment that we make here through the budget is actually through investing in salaries of teachers and all the education staff. So improving their productivity, ensuring they have a good quality, that they can deliver quality education for the children is a lot more important. And where they can see all the structural problem in our labor market, will probably be able to be solved. So there are some allocation for improving school, but I think it's still quite small, and it's I think a total based on the budget documents around 18 million. Unfortunately, this year they will only disburse 200,000 ringgit only, which I feel is a little bit too low for the total allocation. If the government really serious about improving the infrastructure, especially schools, so expenditure for this year should actually be increased. So to ensure that these schools are built quite faster than, because otherwise, the allocation will be disbursed quite later on.
Absolutely. And moving on from there to asking Datuk.
Yeah.
Yes, certainly.
Yeah.
Would you like to hear?
Sorry to interject.
Not at all.
I have a bit of a different opinion, being from the industry, being myself a businessman, and being an entrepreneur for the last 40 years. I would like to share, if I can, that the syllabus which they are teaching in the university, which was created ancient days ago, is meant to train and to educate people to become employees. That was the mindset of majority of the people in the country, or I could say at least the Malays. The mindset was always working for the government, get a good job, you got pension, you got a loan, you get everything, you are secured. Government won't get bankrupt. But in today's world, it's a total different kind of ball game. We need to train the trainers. We need to focus on the syllabus. We got to make the universities interesting. 15 years ago, we approached UUM and told them that 4 years university is not going to work anymore. Then they came up with a system of 2 years in university. They call it 2U, 2I. 2 years university, 2 years industry. Now the latest last year, they've come up with 1 year in the university, 3 years in the industry. Why I'm saying this is that people go into a lot of business or into working in an environment. After a while, they realize it's a mistake. They want to come out of it. But if you're invested in the business, you can't U-turn. If you close the business, you can become a bankrupt because of your initial investment. Therefore, being in the university, they must do what they like and like what they do. And if they do that, then they can actually test their power and is this my cup of tea? Is this my future? Is this what I want to do? So I think the government should focus a lot in the budget which they have on training the existing teachers, changing the modules, developing the modules to suit today's world and future jobs. That's my take on that.
Fair enough. And there has actually been some allocations been made this year round, especially for the TVET graduates,
Correct.
about 18K of them.
Right.
Now, moving along from there into public healthcare and Dr. Zulkifli. So, of course, when we're looking at the 36.3B for the health ministry, this is, of course, a little bit higher than the past one for 34.4. But do you feel that this measure will be enough to perhaps begin addressing the healthcare workers' shortage? And because that is the current crisis that we are facing right now.
I think the shortage of healthcare workers, I think is known to everybody. This is due to non-other salaries, because salary is too low. And then, so this is the problem, actually universal problem that we are facing, that I mentioned earlier. This is a productivity issue because our productivity is not increasing fast enough. Then the
pandemic-related factors of stress on healthcare workers, perhaps.
Yeah,
as well?
and it is the problem. Felt by all sectors in the economy, so including the healthcare workers. So the salary is not increased fast enough, but the demand is there. The demand now you see because of the world demand. Not global is a global market now for the labor force. So people are moving around all over the world. So this is the stress that our system we have to handle that. So there is no other way that we have to increase the salaries sooner or later. All the healthcare workers, for that matter, all the workers in Malaysia. We are facing the issues, and of course the long-term solution, we have to increase productivity. But I think to answer your question on the allocation that to help to settle the issues that we have for the beginning.
That's right.
But
Thank you so much
maybe
for
not
that.
good enough, but I mean, we have to continue doing that.
Absolutely. And Muniati, let's move into infrastructure spending, particularly with regards to the spending on maintenance and improvement of federal roads. Perhaps there will be an impact on reducing Klang Valley-related congestion. What do you feel about similar investments, but for other urbanized but non-Klang Valley areas? Because there have been calls that, of course, it's unequal, but at the same time, the pressures of the Klang Valley are unique indeed.
I think there's a really good commitment from the Prime Minister to actually now expedite the Pan Borneo, right? I think that's one of the main infrastructure piece that we have been having for quite some time, and it's not done yet. So I think that will help connectivity in East Malaysia, which in general will improve the economic development in that area. And now that Indonesia have a plan to move, so I think increasing infrastructure in that will, at the end, will also improve the economic development of the country. But I haven't seen clear check very closely on the maintenance and improvement of federal roads. But I think that there's a certain increase. I think in Ministry of Works have not as much as other ministry like the MOF, but there is quite a significant increase as well for the Ministry of Works, which I hope that will be used to address this problem of maintenance and improvement of federal roads.
Hopefully, indeed. And Datuk Abdul Malik, may I ask you what your perspectives are when it comes to the government actually planning to re-tender flood mitigation projects, and they're predicting a 3 billion ringgit saving overall through this. Your thoughts on how this ought to be expedited and how this will actually impact at the end of the day, not just the everyday Malaysian, but also businesses which operate in these areas and which have, of course, been affected by all the recent flooding issues that have become almost a monthly occurrence, not just a yearly thing.
Right. I think there's two sides of the coin to look at this. In my opinion, is that it's very important for the government to look forward and to move forward. I can still remember that, just to share an example, we used to have a company supplying certain things to the local council. And then one day, this guy actually went up to the previous government and said that, look here, we can save so much of money if we do it ourselves and import these things from China. So the minister was very happy, and they could be saving a few 100,000 ringgit of saving. And then it was actually bags for school, buying bags for school. And the guy actually went there and came back and told the minister that, you see, we have now saved about 200,000 ringgit for the bags, for example. So the irony is that this guy has employed certain number of people and he pays them salary. And now you stop his contract and the government start doing everything themselves. What is the contractors going to do? And when he is trying to get the project, he's paying the lorry fellas, he's paying the loading fellas, he's buying and he's doing it here. And the beautiful part is when they told the minister, they said they saved 200,000. What about the cost of them flying there to negotiate the deal? And then flying there again to make sure it's put on the ship, on the cargo? What about the clearance at the customs? What about bringing it into the warehouse? What about keeping and then distributing it? If the government starts taking the role of the businessman, what is the businessman going to do? Yes, you are saving 3 billion ringgit, but what are the companies which has been engaged, contracts given, payments made, deposits given? What is going to happen to all that chain? I mean, you really got to weigh. 3 billion is a big amount of money. As a Malaysian, I'd love the government if it can save 3 billion and put it to some good use or to help miskin Tega. But in the process, are there going to be many companies going to be bankrupt who were depending on this deal? So I think there's a lot of balance here got to be done. Mm-hmm. We as business people believe in moving forward and improving the system from today. Because if we are going to look for skeletons, trust you me, a lot of skeletons and a lot of time is going to be focused on this energy. And I don't know what we're going to do for the future. I would rather put the energy for today and for tomorrow's generation to come, rather than digging the grave, which is 50 or 100 years ago, and getting everyone to toe the line. I mean, of course, people who have not done a good thing should be punished, but you also got to weigh the circumstances. And if you keep talking about the same thing What's the impression on the ASEAN countries? What is the impression on the investors? What's people going to think out there? My goodness, this country, so much of corruption. I better don't touch it, man. They will take 20 years to get rid of corruption. People are not even going to come into Malaysia. I think people who are sitting up there really got to think, of the both sides of the coin and weigh where we should be going. If we keep telling people we got trillions and trillions of debts, nobody is going to come and invest in our country. So we got to be very careful where and how we portray the image of Malaysia.
That's a fairly balanced perspective for a richly textured issue in Malaysia, of course. Dr. Zulkifli.
Yeah. I think that's a good point. I think this is related to what I said earlier. This is institutional reform. It's very important to have institutional reform. You can have a good plan, good policy, good budget, and so on. But if you have limitation on institutional capability to do, then it's going nowhere. So I think in the past, we have a lot of good ideas, good plan, but cannot happen because we fail in this perspective. So to move forward, I think it is high time that we have to focus on this institutional reform. And keep in mind the dynamism of the international environment. If you are late, you are behind, then people we catch you and go. We be in front of you.
Yeah, you miss the boat.
Yeah, you miss the boat.
Yeah.
So that's how important it is. Even though now people always say it's nothing in the budget. So don't worry, because if you can address the long-term issue along the way, we are within the 12 Malaysia plan. Because the budget only focus on 1 year, but it has to be synchronized with 12 Malaysia plan and the shared prosperity vision. So in the long run. So the increasing productivity, institutional reform, these are the structure issues that have to be addressed. Otherwise, we have to struggle all the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Either way, it's going to be a struggle. You may as well do the institutional reforms. Munianti, I would like to ask you about looking at the SME and gig economy allocations. Out of this, the overall, about 300 million ringgit is going to be set aside for small businesses owned by women and the youth. Specifically, looking at these two sectors, what do you feel it will contribute to help, of course, increase economic activity, especially for women who've been particularly impacted not just by the pandemic, but of course, the gendered roles around unpaid care work?
I think I think any soft loan or grants for entrepreneurs, especially women, are always welcome. But again, this is sound like a broken record. But at the end of the day, it's about implementation. Who can access this? Would it be easier for women to access these facilities, for example? And I think Malaysia doesn't always have this almost every year, no matter who is government sitting.
That's
there.
correct.
There's always be allocation for SMEs. I think right now what we sorely need is actually evaluations to what extent that these many programs, not only from one ministry, from various ministries on SMEs, actually, how much is, what's the outcome so far? What's the impact that we have had? I think we need that evaluation. I mean, of course, it doesn't mean that we have to stop now, but looking into what kind of support that they need. Is it grants? Is it something else? Maybe it's say for example, it's about we want to do more on e-commerce. What's the impediment to e-commerce now? Is it internet, for example? So there are many other things that outside grants that actually we can do, and the need for the government to actually evaluate the current program for SMEs.
Absolutely. Well said. Continuous evaluation of
can
impact.
I add?
Yes, very quickly, please.
Because of the gig economy, I would like to look from the perspective of social security issues, social protection issues.
Certainly. So we'll actually be going into that in the next block. So if you don't mind, we'll just wrap it right over here.
I'd
like to say something to that.
Sure.
I think on the women's empowerment thing, I think the government has done a very good thing, which our FMBA has met the minister twice, the Labour Minister, saying that if you have this Employment Act 1955 implemented 1st January, whereby you give the maternity leave to women for 98 days, it is going to be biased. Employers are not going to employ ladies anymore. So if you're going to set such a kind of ruling, they will be biased. If you are going to employ 2,000 people, and other companies coming in from overseas, they will start taking all male gender. They will not take women. So in that case, we give a suggestion that Perkeso or the EIS insurance scheme, they will take a portion of that to subsidize to the employers so that they continue to employ ladies. And the beautiful thing is that it was mentioned in the budget. So which means they took the input from the industry. And we're very happy, but they have to change the ACTA first for women to go back to work, and the employers will have an advantage where 80% of the payment can be claimed from the insurance or from Perkeso. They're going to change the ACTA on that. So that's a positive note on that.
Thanks for letting us know about that. And I'll just add on a broader policy-based level, a much better way to also enact this and also ensure gender equality within the home landscape is to actually increase and offer new fathers also 98 days of paternity leave. Right. On that note, Tamina Kausji, but I'll be back right here after the break, and we'll be focusing on social welfare and tackling the rising cost of living in our last segment for Madani Budget 2023. Stay tuned.
So dia kata macam ni lah, we have a President UMNO, last time Bapa Pembangunan, Presiden UMNO, Bapa Pemodenan, Presiden UMNO, Bapa Perpaduan, but now we have a Presiden UMNO, Bapa Pemecatan.
This is our main one attraction. This is a Ninja Challenge.
Welcome back to Wachana English Edition with me, Tamina Kausji. Now, refocusing and taking the discussion into social welfare, everyone. Budget Madani, of course, has introduced the Payung Rahma initiative, but there's also been plenty of blowback that the menu Rahma, for example, is not affordable enough, especially for Malaysians with bigger families. What are your perspectives on this, Dato' Abdul?
Well, to be honest, we can't please them all. It's quite impossible to make everyone happy. I think Menu Rahma is an excellent program done by the government, KPDN especially, under KPDN, whereby you get one protein, you get one veggie, and you get rice for RM5. Many of the people who are embarking on this project are doing it as an Amal Jariah thingy, as a CSR thingy, at the same time promoting their outlet, because not everyone's going to eat Menu Rahma. People who got money will want to eat something which is more, they want to have more dishes, or they want to order a drink and they want to pay more. So I think whatever you do, you will have repercussions. There was one WhatsApp which went viral last month, which was a bit of a shocker, saying that Menu Rahma can cause cancer. And, so, I mean, where do we stop?
The levels of disinformation and misinformation, right?
Exactly. So my take is that Menu Rahma is helping a lot of people, and government is also in the pipeline to introduce Cafe Rahma in universities, which probably be done after Hari Raya. They're looking at it whereby it will help all races. Most of the policies now being done is not race-based policies, which is a very positive thing, which we are very supportive and thankful to the new government.
That's right. Yeah. Thanks for that, Dato' Abdul. Now, Muniati, let's go into some of the allocations that have been made about the amending for the Insolvency Act 1967, and how positive do you think it is that the Prime Minister in particular is looking towards writing off bankruptcy for bankrupts less than 50,000 ringgit in debt? We'd mentioned this briefly, but when it comes down to encouraging entrepreneurship and also ensuring that the youth and those who are at least under 50 in Malaysia do not have to be saddled with lifelong debts, what could this mean for this roughly 100 to 200,000 individuals?
I think you talked about this before, right? I think one of the things I think I wouldn't be able to provide a good insight, but I think yes, bankruptcy has been one of the problem that people. I think I have a friend of mine as well who have that problem, and you can't do anything if you're bankrupt, right? Even though so many years and you couldn't write off the debt. I think times, yes, of course, people who make a mistake or have this, you have to have a responsibility to repay your debt. But at some point, there need to be helping hand that can actually help them to start their life again and be on their feet again. So I think it's a good initiative in general, and something that can help people who are already in the situation to actually start their lives again.
Absolutely. Sure, Dr. Zulkifli?
Don't forget also that these people in this situation, sometimes this is due to our creation because of the previous policy encourage people to spend money, to boost economic growth, to spend money, then, easy credit, then people are trapped into that. So therefore, you cannot really penalize them for life because of the not really their mistake, but it's the system supporting that kind of behavior. So we need to bear in mind. So I think this is a good move.
Now, moving along from there into the fact that, of course, B40 communities with a household income of less than 2,500 ringgit will also become eligible for Rahmah Cash Aid of up to 2,500 ringgit, depending on the number of children. Perspectives on whether this type of cash handout are a positive development. Muniati?
I think one of the tools that the government can help to provide social protection is cash handout. The problem is, of course, the way it's being dispersed and how does the government have good, reliable data to actually ensure that these allocations is given to the right person. I think during COVID we have this many money goes to wrong people, and we see it. So we have a problem in terms of the integrity of our database. We still have problem with that. So a program is good, and in fact, it's quite large allocation. If I'm not mistaken, about 42 billion in total, including subsidies. So it's quite a lot of money put into that. It's a 20% of our operating expenditure. So having a really good database ensure that the people who actually need it, single mothers, for example, who are struggling with raising their kids, many people who earn below even. I met like people with 700 ringgit monthly. So these people need that. But if we don't have reliable database, so this huge allocation will not reach the people who actually need it.
Absolutely, those who need it the most.
I would like to
certainly, Dr. Zulkifli.
It has been proven, this is in other countries, that cash handout, if you want to address the issue of distribution, fair distribution, cash handout is the best way. In Latin America, countries, Brazil, Argentina, there's cash handout that to reduce disparity between the rich and the poor. But in doing that, the mechanism, we need to improve on the mechanism because we have to move from the currently we are using the means tested. So meaning people have to apply, then the authority go check they're eligible or not. So move to categorical cash assistance, like many countries doing categorical, meaning if you are in that category, for example, bantuan orang tua, so you cross the age of senior citizen, you're eligible. So you don't have to apply, then they go check you are eligible or not. Then because it is stigmatizing, stigma, people think, orang miskin, so you go to ask them, people think you are lazy, ask for welfare. So this stigma, if you give categorically everyone eligible, that's easy. And you reduce the administrative cost. Because currently our bantuan cash handout, the administrative cost alone, I think easily 10%, more than 10%, between 10 to 20%. Just imagine if you give 1 billion, then 100,000 goes to the administrative cost. 100 million.
100 million.
Yeah, so you can save a lot there. And also by having means tested, people apply, then you have go check. It is prone to exclusion errors and inclusion errors. So many people who are supposed to get, they don't get. This is we call it type 1 error. it's still very, very bad because you are the, the people in difficult situation, but they cannot get it. But inclusion errors, people are not supposed to get, they get it. So the misallocation of resources. So by having categorical, I think in the long run, the social protection system, we need to improve to that. But of course, you cannot do immediately. So what the current budget doing, the current government is doing, just to continue, because people, this is a urgent situation that people need help. So we need to give, still need to give. But of course, we need to relook into the mechanism, how to, and also the digitalization. We have now how to centralize the data, and sometimes we have a lot of overlapping.
That's right.
Ministries and departments. It's more than 100 departments handling social assistance, cash handout here and there. We cannot standardize it. So that is the way forward. I think eventually that should be put forward to improve the whole landscape.
Thank you, Dr. Zulkifli. I think it was particularly insightful because you're pointing exactly to where the leakages can occur and also to reduce the intersectional barriers so that there is a fair distribution of the allocations that are already there. Quite quickly, Dr. Abdul, could we go into your perspectives on whether the budget has adequately addressed agriculture and food security, particularly from the business perspective of those who are involved in these sectors?
Frankly speaking, I feel that there's still a lot of emphasis to be done on food security. We all know very clearly that Malaysia is having a lot of issues and the price of goods are going up, inflation, and a lot of people are struggling. And we find that certain items, we talk about chicken, we talk about egg, we talk about very basic things. And Malaysia being such a large country, and we have such good temperature, and our plantations, there's so much of place. But unfortunately, despite having so many agencies like Pharma and so many agencies like Felcra, Felda, and all these agencies, why we are not able to produce food for only 30 over billion people, And the issue, which has always been a stumbling block from day one, is the middleman. The middleman is the man who makes the most money. When I talk about the middleman, we come back to the same question of the cartel. We had so much of issues about meat being brought in which was not halal, and it got cleared from the customs in Johor. How did that even went through the customs? So I think government should work with the industry players and come up with enough plan for the next 10, 20, and 30 years. So we are not dependent on a few people and those people who control. And this issue of having permit, you give permit to a few people, they become monopoly, they control the whole thing, there's no healthy market, you cannot compete with them, everything goes to them first, and then it's supplied to the wholesalers, the price goes up. I feel that the government is serious in helping the people, and we are talking about good governance, we're talking about transparency. Now is the time that we take away all these unnecessary permits and disallow our country to send out our good produce to other countries, and then we end up not having the product, and we have to import from other countries because ours A grade and B grade, the higher grades, are sent to other countries. Why do we allow exports when we don't have enough to consume? So we should force our people that you provide, that's your obligation as a businessman. You got to feed Malaysians first before you feed other people. So I think there is still a lot to be done in this area. We really got to bring in the experts and see how, it's not an overnight thing. It won't happen. It will be a process. But there should be, in a matter of 10 years, we should not have issues, because the way things are going is going to be a problem, not for Malaysia, but for the whole world. And we are lucky because we don't have 4 climates. And I think we should take advantage of that and start focusing on...
I think there's a policy decision actually to allow some of the land, unused land by Felcra and Felda, actually used for agricultural products. So let's see. Let's see whether this policy will actually be implemented and being
That's
actually
right.
used by, the government give the mandate to these agencies to use your land more productively. So let's see whether that have some impact in the next 2 or 3 years.
Absolutely.
So something that to look forward to.
And now I've got a big question, the golden question perhaps, on EPF for you, Murniati. Now, of course, the Madani government is standing firm on the decision not allow any more KWSP withdrawals. Well, this unfortunately happens to be a point that is used by critics of the budget from ideas perspective. And of course, looking at social protection as also Malaysia's aging nation status. Why is this actually a sound decision?
I think we are in a society where we don't have enough saving for retirement. Having EPF, I know some of it probably actually small in value, but having even that small amount left in your account to actually support you and your family when you are already out of work or you're old, or even when you're having other problems, I think it's very important. Now that the economic, I know some people are probably still struggling, some people are still facing some problem, but I think it's a time that our economy is also start like recovering. It's time for us to put saving again. And I think having additional 500 allocation for those who have less than 10,000 in their account is a good way to encourage more saving. It's not, for me, it's something that is a tough decision. I think some people are probably still need it, but I think it's time to encourage people to actually put more saving because we need it. And the government, you have a system where this pension system where we can rely on in the future.
That's right.
Can I-
Sure, Dr. Zulkifli.
I think
Your thoughts?
the issue is we need to be clear on the policy differences. There's certain policy, you cannot address everything with just one policy to address everything. The EPF is clearly, the mandate is for social protection, for retirement savings. And of course, people in the situation, that difficulty, then okay, naturally we have money, we are saving, how come we cannot use? So you cannot, you have to use different mechanisms to address that. You cannot mix the two because it's contradicting objective, because as Murniati mentioned, social EPF, we have the adequacy issue. I mean, many people not adequate enough to retire, and not to mention that our protection floor is not wide enough. Meaning many people still uncovered. So those with EPF, they are covered, but not adequate. So if you allow withdrawal, then this is seemingly that you're helping them. Actually, you're not doing a favor to them because they will suffer in the future. Because keep in mind that majority of those who withdraw from EPF, maybe later on they will face problem. Maybe some people have discipline enough, they can see recover back in a different method. But majority, it is proven because even people with money, if you have to save for your retirement, I will not do that. So now you have a system to take care of you. This is saving for your retirement. It's your money, for future money. You just borrow from your future money. So to solve this problem, I think, for those people who are really no other way to solve, the government has no other ways. Have to find a different mechanism, cash transfer.
Yeah, cash handout. Yes.
Then that's the only way. And that's why we need to, the whole landscape of social protection has to be more productive developmental framework. It's not welfare, not just to give cash and as a welfare, but the whole system we have to treat as this is growth enhancing. So in the end, the whole economy will be benefited from that. Then the government will have more extra money to give cash handout to people. But you need to maintain the system.
That's right.
If you violate that, then you have more difficulty in the future.
Thank you for that, Dr. Zulkifli. And to all panelists, Dr. Abdul Malik, Muniati, as well as Dr. Zulkifli. So a very interesting discussion, of course, and analyzing and dissecting just how Madani Budget 2023 is. I think we have the answers that we were looking for. And meanwhile, I'm Tamina Kowji signing off for Wachana English Edition. Please catch us next time around. Have a very lovely evening. Goodbye.